All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're digging into a huge debate, one that's happening all around us, the great farm debate, organic versus industrial. And this is a big deal because it touches everything, our environment, our economy, and yeah, the food that's actually on our plates. But let's kick things off with a bigger question, one that gets to the heart of it all. Beyond our own personal health, what's good for us, does what we choose to eat really make a difference? We're going to follow that question from the inside of a single plant cell all the way up to the health of an entire town. On one side of the debate, you've got this picture, right? It's the classic family farm. For so many of us, this is a really powerful image. It speaks to independence, a real connection to the land. It's an idea that's, well, it's deeply planted in our culture. And then there's the other side of the coin, modern industrial agriculture. This system is built for one thing, really, to max out efficiency. And it does that through specialization, through massive consolidation, and through a whole lot of mechanization. These are just two fundamentally different ways of looking at the world. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we're going to start small. I mean, really small. We're talking about the cellular level. What actually happens inside a plant when it's fed two different kinds of fertilizer? Well, to answer that, we're jumping into a study from 2018. Scientists took a couple of common herbs, basil and marjoram, and they split them into three groups. One group got organic fertilizer. Another got a standard chemical fertilizer, the NPK stuff, for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And the last group was a control, so it got nothing. Simple setup. And the results? Well, this is where it gets super interesting. First off, chlorophyll. That's the green stuff in plants that's absolutely essential for photosynthesis. It's basically the plant's solar-powered energy factory. The organically fed plants, they had way more of it. More chlorophyll suggests a healthier, more efficient energy system inside the plant. And the trend didn't stop there. Next, they looked at total soluble proteins. Think of these as the basic building blocks for the plant's growth and all its functions. And, as you can see, once again, the organically treated plants came out on top. And for the final piece of this tiny puzzle, they measured amino acids, another absolutely critical component for plants' health. And, yep, you guessed it. For the third time, the organic group showed the highest levels. So on 3 different key health markers, the result was exactly the same. So what did the researchers themselves take away from all this? Well, their conclusion was pretty direct. In their experiment, the organic fertilizers didn't just hold their own, they actually produced plants that showed healthier internal signs. Okay, so we've seen a clear difference inside a single plant. Now let's pull the camera back, way back. Let's see how these different philosophies scale up and actually build the framework for an entire national industry. How does this industrial model really work? So at the very core of the industrial system is this idea called vertical integration. It might sound like a business school buzzword, but it's pretty simple. It just means that one huge corporation, which they call an integrator, owns or controls almost every single step of the journey, from the animals themselves to the feed to the processing plants. And this setup leads to what's called a contract farming system. Let's break down how that works. The integrator, the big company, owns the animals. The farmer, who's often called a grower now, they own the land and the very expensive specialized buildings. The integrator calls all the shots, what to feed the animals, what medicines to use, everything. And in return, the farmer just gets paid a set fee to raise them. Now, you can probably see how this creates a pretty major imbalance when it comes to who's taking the risk. The grower is on the hook for massive long-term debt. We're talking 10 to 15-year loans on buildings that can't be used for anything else. But the integrator? Their risk is just short-term. It's tied only to the animals in a single flock. This system completely reshapes the power dynamic, and it leaves a lot of farmers with very few options. Just how few? Well, that brings us to a single, pretty staggering number. 77%. Think in for a second. According to a major report from the Pew Commission, that's the percentage of contract poultry farmers who say they have literally no other buyer for their chickens. If that one big company decides not to give them a new contract, they've got nowhere else to turn. So we've gone from the plant to the farm. Let's zoom out one last time. What happens when this industrial model becomes the main game in town? What's the ripple effect on Main Street? Well, that same Pew Commission report talks about a really significant human cost. Farmers reported that with all the key decisions being made for them, they felt a loss of independence, a sense of powerlessness. It actually changes the identity of what it means to be a farmer.
And the economic story is just as clear. Check this out. Studies show that smaller farms are really woven into the fabric of their local towns. They spend about 95 cents of every dollar right there locally. By contrast, the biggest industrial farms, they spend less than 20 cents locally, often buying in bulk from faraway suppliers instead.
So when you add up all these economic pressures, what does it look like on the ground? Well, this map tells the story pretty clearly. The total number of farms in the US just keeps on dropping. Each one of those red dots represents a loss of 20 farms in just a 5-year window. And over decades of research, a pretty consistent pattern has come into focus. Communities where a few huge industrial farms dominate, when compared to towns with lots of smaller farms, tend to show a lower quality of life, more poverty, fewer local businesses, and even less community involvement. So as we bring this all together, it's really important to get that this is not just an American story. This debate about what farming should look like in the future, it's a huge global conversation that's happening right now. And let's be really clear about this. This is not just a US issue, not by a long shot. You see these same fundamental questions about efficiency versus sustainability, about community health, they're being asked all over the world. I mean, take this for example. A recent report from Niti Aayog, that's the Indian government's top policy group, is all about how to promote organic fertilizers and find real, eco-friendly alternatives to the chemical-heavy model. And that brings us all the way back to where we started, from the amount of chlorophyll in a single leaf all the way to the economic health of Main Street. It seems pretty clear that our choices ripple outwards. So I guess the final question is for us. When we choose our food, what kind of world are we choosing to grow?